Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Microsoft GP Year-End webinar. I'm Ali Pakalnis, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Before we dive in, I'd like to share a few quick tips for using Teams so you can easily engage with our presenters and get the most out of today's experience. Next slide. You'll notice a Q&A panel on your screen. Feel free to submit your questions there at any time, and we'll be actively monitoring them throughout the session. If you'd like to chat directly with one of our hosts, simply click the chat icon. And finally, if you experience any technical issues, just hit the raise hand button and I will connect with you right away. After the webinar, you will receive a link to download the slide deck and watch the recorded presentation from today. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters, Chad Hunley, Rebecca Boonis, and Dawn Prigmore.
I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Chad Hundley. I have been with Armanino for 6 years. I have been working with Microsoft Dynamics GP for over 20 years as a consultant and as a client in an assist administrator role. I have experience with manufacturing, healthcare, property management, so I'm kind of all over the board with experience in different industries. So it's a little bit about me. I'll pass it over to Rebecca.
Welcome, everybody. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're from. But yeah, Rebecca Bunis. I'm part of the client management team here at Armanino. I've been with Armanino for 12 years now, come January 1st. Time flies. And prior to that, I was with an organization in San Diego called Rose Business Solutions. Armanino had acquired us back in January of 2014. So I was there for about 18 years. And yeah, so in the sort of Dynamics community now for pushing 30 years come May, which is just crazy to me. Time flies. But I'm based in Denver, Colorado. Now, I've been there for about 3 years prior to being in San Diego, and I'm actually in our San Ramon corporate offices today for some team meetings. So glad you guys were able to join today.
Yeah, thank you very much to everybody who's joined, and we're glad to have you here. I'm Dawn Prigmore. I have been with Armanino since April of 2023, and I've been working with Microsoft Dynamics GP since 1998, so also getting close to that 30-year mark. It's hard to believe. My primary focus is on GP support. I love supporting end users and helping people to be empowered by all of the tools and make plans for the future. So any questions that you have about this webinar or any others, we hope that you guys will reach out. Love project accounting, payroll distribution. My joy is my family, and that's a little bit about me. Next slide.
Great. So a little bit about Armanino. Some of you on the call may or may not be familiar with everything that Armanino can do, but Armanino, we are a top 20 CPA and consulting firm. Our headquarters are based, as I mentioned, in San Ramon, California, in the Bay Area. And we have offices, as you can see, kind of up and down California and multiple states across the states from the West Coast to the East Coast, including New York and Philadelphia. We also have 2 offices in India and about 2,700 team members across the country, because we have about 41 states team members, I was going to say, and most of those team members are also spread across throughout the United States or throughout the country. So towards the end of this slide, we do have sort of a firm services overview slide. We won't go through it all today, but many of you are obviously here today to learn more about, helping with your year end on GP. But Armanino does much more than just supporting our GP clients. So certainly if you have a business need, good chance Armanino probably has a solution service to help your organization with that. So you can always reach out to me and I'll bring in the appropriate people to have those conversations and, see how we can help your business. Should you have a specific need or challenge, need to solve a problem, we're happy to help.
So our agenda today, we're going to have a quick overview of what we're going to be going over. We're going to go over year-end close planning and then go over installing the year-end update, the year-end closing procedures for all the submodules within GP, and then the year-end closing procedures for the GL, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. Oops, went too far. So our learning objectives today is we're going to identify the tasks and considerations to effectively plan for the year-end close for each module within GP. And we're going to define the procedures to successfully close the year in each module. So the year-end close overview, the Microsoft year-end update installation, and we'll go over that. The sequence and timing of the close for each module must also be considered. Not all modules are applicable to all companies, and if you use the payroll module, the tax update must be downloaded after the 2025 payroll close and before processing your 2026 payroll. The standard closing sequence goes as follows. You don't always have to follow this because they really are not dependent on each other, but normally you would start off with the AR close, and then you'd move to the payables close, then the inventory close, then the fixed assets and payroll, and then end with the general ledger. In some instances, it's good to take a backup after each module, a database backup of the company, just as a safeguard.
Yeah, so I'll make a note there. If you're doing your closes back to back to back, so if you're logging into the company and you're having all of the users out, you make a good backup before you start your process, then it's safe to go through certain pieces like closing your AP, closing inventory, closing AR with that backup, just knowing that if you need to restore from backup, you've got to go back to the step before you started. So if you want to make sure that you only have to go back one step, then make sure you're making a backup between each close. And if you have users getting back in the system before you're closing each module, then you definitely want to remake a backup before you click close for each, before you do your prep.
So the year-end close planning, I also want to mention that everyone's going to be, there's also a handout that goes with this presentation that you'll all be receiving as well. And you're going to want to start with the checklist, and there is a checklist within that as well. Then you're going to plan, you need to plan for the downtime of when you're going to close the year, because the users should be out of each company when you close them. And then you're going to plan the installation of the year-end update, which is optional, and we're going to kind of go over that in a minute as well. And then you also, again, want to consider doing database backups, and when and how many. On to poll 1.
Let me unmute myself. Okay, poll number 1. Is the year-end update required to process 2025 W-2s? Yes, no, or I don't know. Let me know when they're getting close to finishing. Or Angie.
Give it a couple more seconds. All right, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll, and the results are in the chat.
Great. So it looks
Yeah.
like yep, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was going to say, so have yes, no, and I don't know. So it looks like the majority of the responses were yes. This was a little tricky because I don't think we had this. I think this question was maybe a little premature, right? Dawn hasn't quite gone through, some of the requirements on this. But for this year, for the year-end update, it is not required to process your W-2s. So some years, the year-end update is required to install because there's form changes or code changes. But this year, there are no form changes that's going to require to do the year-end update installation. And John, you can elaborate on that if needed.
Yeah, so a little premature, but also a little intentional, right? So just to gauge a little bit of where everybody stands on your knowledge about the year-end close process for 2025. So I probably would have guessed 70% as well if I didn't know that, or I would have guessed yes as well with the 70% if I was coming in cold. But like Rebecca said, the year-end update install, so the code update, is optional this year for payroll and for AP. You don't need to install the year-end update to get any form changes. There are no 1099-R form changes, no W-2 form changes, no Mag Media form changes, no 1099 form changes. So that means that you'll install your tax update, but you don't actually have to do an upgrade to process your W-2s and 1099s. So we'll talk about that a little bit further later on, but it is optional for your close process. We do recommend that you stay current on your releases for bug fixes and new feature updates that have been released. So there's benefit to doing the install, but it is not required in this time crunch period where you're trying to get your 1099s and W-2s out the door. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, and I guess that's me. So sorry about that, Chad. I thought I was just going to sit here and watch today. So installing the year-end update, we just talked about this, right? There is no update for the GP 2018 and or prior versions of GP. So that's where we want to start. We had a question before the webinar asking if this would apply to 2013. It does apply to GP 2013 in that the steps that you take are very similar, but you need to know that you won't have any tax updates released for GP 2013. That release is no longer supported by Microsoft. So if you need payroll tax updates, then you do need to upgrade to at least GP 2018, after the initial release. So GP 2018 is out of support as well. You need to make sure that you're upgraded. And if you're going to upgrade, we would recommend that you would upgrade to the current release. So that would be the year-end update. Okay, so no update released for 2018 and prior, meaning you need to be on 2018 dot something to get the year-end update and also to get the tax updates. The year-end update for GP 2018 or GP 18X, sorry, there was 2018 and there's 18. So GP 18X is cumulative and will upgrade your version to GP version 18.8, which is the year-end update. The update must be installed on the GP server and on each computer with GP installed on it. So you do plan for downtime for that. Your users cannot be processing while you do the update, and we are happy to help you with your updates. The year-end update is not required this year, like we've covered, for payroll and for 1099 year-end processing. But if you have luxury automobiles that you're tracking in your financial fixed assets module, you do need to apply the year-end update. So if you're using the fixed assets module and you are depreciating for luxury automobiles or tracking luxury automobiles, you do need to apply the year-end update to capture the changes there. We do have a pro tip. If you're on GP 18.4 or a prior version, you'll need to use a 1099 filing service to produce the 1099s. If you have 10 or more 1099s, you must e-file with a service. All right. Next slide. And there are no AP changes. So these are our key features, right? No AP form changes. There is a change for the luxury auto depreciation changes. So in fixed assets, there is not a form change for 1099-R forms. There is not a form change for the W-2 forms, and there is not a form change for electronic filing W-2s. So no requirements for AP and AP and payroll, but there is a requirement for fixed assets. Okay, and that will bring us to poll number 2. So
I didn't, yeah,
do you see it?
no.
Okay, so poll number 2, are there any form changes for 1099s this year? Yes, no, or I don't know.
Yeah, I had a message on my screen that I wasn't connected to it or something. So thank you, Don.
No worries. Yeah. I mean, when I was slacking for my own slide, so I can pick up. All right, and we'll wait for Angie to give us the countdown. We've got some answers in the chat.
All right.
Now I see it.
Let's go for a couple more seconds. All right, 3, 2. Ooh, there's still some change. 1. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Share the results.
That's exactly right. So no, there are no form changes for 1099s this year. There is no requirement to install the year-end update before you process your 1099s. Great job.
The receivables, we're going to go over the receivables year-end close now. What does the receivables year-end close actually do? It doesn't do a whole lot. It moves the summary calendar year-to-date finance charges to the last year calendar field for the amount since last close only. And for the fiscal year-end close, it moves all the summary year-to-date fields other than the finance charges and to the last year fields for the amount since last close only. There are no transactions that are created from the year-end close process. It does generate a report, and I do suggest that you do run the report to the screen so that way when it's done processing, you know it's finished, because when that report is done processing, it's done. The report really just has that summary information on it for your customers. If it can be quite lengthy, all your customers will appear on the report, even if you don't have activity with them. If you haven't used a customer for several years, they'll still be on the report, but with the 0 amounts. So I highly suggest not printing the report because it can be hundreds of pages depending on how many customers you have. So, but if you do want to keep it, I just suggest saving it as a PDF, but really it's just reference only, and it's not really any relevant information that you're probably going to look at ever again. Next, we're going to go, go over the payables year-end close. What does the payables year-end close do? It doesn't do a whole lot. The calendar year-end close just clears the summary year-to-date 1099 amount and moves it to the last year calendar field in the vendor yearly summary. This summary amount is not used for generating 1099s. You do not need to wait to generate your 1099s until you close the payables module. There are two separate processes that do not function with one another. The fiscal year end close transfers all summary amounts other than the 1099 amount on the amount since last close view from the year to date to last year. And I can kind of show you that, and it functions the same way for receivables. I'm just going to pop open GP real quick. The information can be found in GP under the vendor cards, and it's the summary right here. And I'm going to just choose a vendor I know that has activity, and I'm going to click on the yearly button at the bottom. And here's the amount since last close. Really, the numbers that are going to be really, really accurate is the fiscal year and the calendar year numbers, because if you don't close your AP module prior to posting new transactions in the new year, and you wait and close in like February or later in the year, the numbers are not going to show you the accurate numbers for the year. It's just the numbers for the last close, but the actual numbers are going to be shown under the fiscal year. And I just hit calculate, and here's my numbers, and that's fiscal year, and the same thing for calendar year. They're going to be your actual numbers for that year.
Yeah, so to say that a little bit differently, just on that amount since close dropdown, that is only showing you, it's literally showing you the data from the moment you push the button, right? So if somebody has posted already for the year, then it's not giving you fiscal year or calendar year. That is why you have that calculate button under those two options. So like Chad was saying, those two will be the two that you'll rely on most regularly.
One other thing I do want to mention about the payables and receivables close is they're not required to close. You do not have to close them. We do have clients that kind of skip over those two modules because you really don't have to to do the year-end close for them unless you want to. So now we're going to talk about 1099s. This process is independent from the payables year-end close process. They're not reliant on each other at all. The first step you want to do is you want to make sure that your 1099 information is correct and to make any edits if necessary. So you want to actually go in and make sure that all of your vendors who are 1099 vendors are set up properly as a 1099 vendor. And then you also want to verify that the dollar amounts are correct. If for some reason the information is not correct or the numbers seem a bit skewed, please reach out to support. You can reach out to Armanino support by sending an email to supportservices@armanino.com, and we'd be happy to help you look at your numbers and see why they may not be correct or not. If you're printing your 1099s from GP, you no longer need to purchase those 1099 forms online or at your office stores. You can directly print them from GP if you're on version 18.5 and above. And this is applicable for all the different types: NEC, miscellaneous, interest, and dividends. So they print with all the lines on the form, so you don't need to purchase any forms. You hit the print button and it prints right on plain white paper. If you are not on a current version, on one of those current versions, 18.5 and above, you're going to have to use an electronic filing service. So Armanino does offer that, and then Rebecca's going to mention that a little bit later in our presentation, but we do offer a process that's pretty nice and pretty slick. So again, if you're not printing 1099s from GP, you're going to have to submit to an electronic processor, which we can help you out with that.
And also, if you have 10 or more forms, and Dawn, I think you're going to cover this maybe in a little bit, but if you do have 10 or more forms, you are required by, the IRS to e-file. So again, that's something Armanino can help with, that e-filing service if needed.
Absolutely. And with corrections, so Chad mentioned reach out to us if you have help, and if you need help, if you found that some of your numbers are off, we are happy to help with that. One of the reasons that we recommend that you reach out there are multiple opportunities to correct. So there are multiple tools to use. You can correct one at a time. You can correct in mass. It depends on what your issue is. So we can help you understand all of those options for correcting those numbers. Yeah.
Okay. Poll number 3.
Okay. Do you have to close your fiscal or calendar year prior to processing 1099s? Yes, no, I don't know.
Still see a few responses coming in. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay. I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll.
All right. You guys are getting good. So that's correct. 78% said no, and that is the correct answer.
Yep. So those two processes are completely independent of one another, the 1099s and the year-end close for payables. Great job. All right, so we'll go on to inventory year-end close. So let's stop and talk about that sequence that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. Chad mentioned that there was, an order that we typically do these steps in, but there's not really a requirement to do them in that order. We've talked as we've gone through AP and AR about the fact that they are optional closes. So you're just moving summary numbers, and it's only in that amount since last close. There's no journal entry created. There are no transactions created in the subledger. It's moving a summary bucket from right now to the bucket that is amount since last close, which, like we talked about, is the day that you hit the button. So inventory is similar in that there are no transactions that are created for the inventory close. But what we do recommend is that as you're going through these, if you are closing your subledgers, if you're closing AR, if you're closing AP, if you're walking through these processes, make sure that you do all of them before you do the general ledger. So that's the only thing that really is required, is that your subledger closings happen before you close the GL, because as you're going through your subledger closes, you're thinking through, have I posted all of my transactions for the year? Have I posted any unposted batches that are out there? Are there any adjustments? So those things do need to post before you post your year end, ideally, so that they will be included in your year end close. We will talk about what happens if you don't do that, because with GP, it's fixable, right? So what does the inventory year end close do? It closes the summary year-to-date quantities, costs, and sales fields and moves them to the last year field in the item history window. So we're sensing a pattern, right? This is the same thing that it's doing for AR and AP. It's taking your summary totals and it's moving them over to history. It does do more in the year-end close for inventory, as in let me stop and get my words. It updates each item's beginning quantity for the year. It also gives you additional options. So you can remove discontinued items that don't have history. You can remove sold lot attributes, and you can remove the sold receipts and cost change history prior to a certain date. So that one is date sensitive. You can decide when to move that. And then you can also update the item's standard cost. So the item's standard cost can be updated to match the current cost as part of your year end. Note that there are no item restrictions, there's no class restrictions, there are no ranges to apply. So any choices that you make here are happening to all of the items in inventory. No transactions are created, as we talked about before, from the inventory close. So there's no journal entry to be posted. There's no impact on your general ledger. It is just moving data within the subledger and cleaning up what you may not need to keep for history. So if you don't need those discontinued items, or if you need to update your current cost, your standard cost with your current cost, all of those things can be done as part of your close. All right. So we can go to the next slide. We do have a question in the chat, so I'm going to pause and we'll just note that if we're submitting 1099s to IRS via e-file, we can still print out the recipient copies in GP as long as we are on 18 or 18.5 or above. That is correct. Just a quick note there, you can print them on any version. The difference between 18.5 and above is that you don't need the pre-printed forms to print them out. So you can print those regardless of the version that you're on, but prior to 18.5, you will need a pre-printed form to print them on. Great question. Okay, so let's talk about fixed assets. What does the fixed assets year-end close do? So first of all, we've talked about the fact that if you have luxury automobiles in your fixed assets module, you do want to install the year-end close. There is an update involving the fixed assets luxury auto depreciation. So you want to make sure that you plan for that. And in the handout that we mentioned earlier, you will have all the detailed steps and information, links, all of the things that you need for that year-end close. And what the fixed assets year-end close does is it clears the year-to-date depreciation and year-to-date maintenance amounts. So up until now, everything else has been optional. Fixed assets is not optional. If you are using the fixed assets module, you do need to run the close, or when you go to depreciate for the first period in the new year, you will get an error that the current year on your book does not match your current year. So that happens with your year-end close. It is required for fixed assets. Clears the year-to-date depreciation and year-to-date maintenance amounts. The current fiscal year is incremented to the next year. So that's what we just talked about on that book setup window. You can see the current fiscal year is showing 2027 in our sample data, because that's what it is for the sample data in GP. And so I would need to advance that to 2028. Or if we're talking actual life, then we would advance that to 2026 from 2025. The cost basis is copied to the begin year cost. The life to date depreciation is copied to the begin reserve. Your salvage value is copied to the begin salvage. And again, no transactions are created as part of your year-end close for fixed assets. So you're not posting anything to the GL, but you are doing quite a bit within the module, and it is required before you can do your depreciation for the new year. So fixed assets, you do have a change involved in the year-end close, and it is required before you move into the new year. All right. So that takes care of fixed assets. Now we get to payroll. So first of all, I love payroll. I'm a bit of a payroll junkie, and there's a lot involved in the payroll year-end close. So we've talked about at the beginning of this webinar, making your backups before you close each module, or optionally closing modules, one right after the other from APAR inventory. When it comes to payroll and the general ledger, you want to make a backup right before you close the year in each module. So before you close payroll, make a backup. Before you close the GL, make a backup. And we do have all of these steps outlined in the handout that you will receive after this webinar. The reason that's important is because payroll and GL are doing the heavy lifting. So payroll is creating your year-end wage file, and it's going through and it's actually creating and updating tables, or not creating the tables, but updating the tables with all of your data for the year, and prepping a separate container, if you will, or tables that will store all of the information for 2025, so you can move forward with 2026, move forward with the new tax update, and all of that data is sitting over here in separate tables that will not be impacted unless you go in and make edits. So it is important, kick your users out, make a good backup, then close the year. You don't want to take a chance that somebody goes in and accesses a record while it's moving that data around. Okay, and you'll find that I flip back and forth between data and data. It's just me. So U.S. payroll year-end close. What does the payroll year-end close do? Well, just like we talked about, it creates the year-end wage file. So that first screenshot that you see up in the top left, that is it's as easy as that. You click process, it moves all of that data from 2025 to separate tables. So it still stays over here. It's all there for your inquiries and reporting, but it copies all of that data over into your year-end wage file tables, so that now you can go and you can apply the tax update and start processing 2026 while you're reviewing and editing your W-2s. There are a couple of things that you're going to do in between those steps, so let's talk about that. And I let myself run out of water. Bear with me. Nothing like being on a webinar and not having a water. So it creates the year-end wage file, which contains the annual wage information, just like we talked about. It holds the data in separate tables, allowing you to review and prepare your W-2s while processing the 2026 payrolls. So all the things that we've discussed. One step that you want to make sure that you take before you move forward with 2026, remember we have all of our users out. It's a computer. There are things that happen. Somebody can kick a power cord when they're walking by. You can drop your internet, you can drop your connection. So whether you're streaming in or you're locally and on the network, you can drop your network connection, right? So there are different things that could happen in the middle of that process running. You always want to be safe and not sorry. So we can tell you all the horror stories about somebody not planning and not having a backup and then needing it for some bizarre occurrence. I live in Oklahoma, so tornadoes are a thing, right? So it is important to have that backup, and the way that you know whether or not you're okay and need to restore to a backup is it's important to tie out after you create your year-end wage file. So if I'm walking through this with you, we're going to push that button to create the year-end wage file, and then we're going to go in and run our W-3, because the W-3 has all of the totals, and then I can tie that the yearly totals to my 941s for the year. So before you're closing your payroll year end, you're doing all of your month end close. This is your year end close. Do your month and your quarter closes that you've done all year long. That way you've got your 941s. You can total your 4 941s for the year, tie them to your year end wage total on your W-3, or print the year end wage file and use the totals at the bottom. So once you've tied those totals out, there's not a big discrepancy, then you can move forward. So that's how you know whether or not you've got to roll back. I have people ask all the time, I've made this backup, but how do I know if there's an issue without getting all the way down the line and finding it later? That's exactly how you do it. So you'll tie those numbers out, you'll make sure everything's good, then you can move forward with the next steps and move forward with processing your 2026 payroll. So there are 2 Microsoft updates. Timing is key. If you were required to install the year-end update, we'd have to make sure we did that before creating the year-end wage file. We don't have to worry about that this year. You can upgrade or update whenever you want. So it is a mini upgrade when you apply an update, but if you do decide to stay current on your versions, you can do that whenever you're ready. It does not have to be done before you process your year-end wage file this year, right? So if you're going to do it, if you were required, you would do it before the payroll year end close, but we're not required this year, so we can do it whenever we're ready. You will install the latest payroll tax update. So there's a difference between the year-end update, that is code that is updating your actual application, and the tax update is just updating the tables in GP. So you will process your year-end wage, create your year-end wage file, process your year-end after making a backup and kicking users out, right? And then you will tie your numbers, make sure that everything aligns, and then you can let your users back in once you know that you're good to proceed. If there's something really unexpected, if there's something that's really out of balance or just doesn't look right to you, reach out to us and we can help you diagnose that. Or you can always restore from a backup and rerun it. That's up to you. Once you've done that and you've tied out your numbers, you're letting users back in. Now you can install the latest tax update so that you're ready to process your first payroll for 2026. You can see over on the right that you also have multiple options in this window. You can edit your W-2s. So that will be another window, but you can edit W-2s. You can print an alignment form. You can print your W-2 forms as many times as you need to. All of these things are included in the steps that we'll send you, and the links to the detailed resources are in there as well. Okay, employers filing 10 or more W-2 forms must file electronically. GP creates a file in the required format. So that's that magnetic media file that we talked about. No updates required there either. No, pardon me, if you are processing Canadian payroll, pardon me, I turned away as though that wasn't a microphone right by my mouth. For Canadian payroll, download the latest update here. We've got the links here for you, and we've also got them in the handout, and find the instructions there as well. So if you are processing Canadian payroll, you do have an update that is required. So you'll want to make sure that you go out to those resources and read the blog article to tell you how to install, when to install, and what your next steps will be. All right. Pro tip. The payroll year end should be completed after all 2025 payroll transactions have been posted. That is a true statement. And before the transactions are entered before 2026, also true. And make a backup of your company database prior to creating your year end wage file. So all the things that we've talked about, but those two things are really key. Your timing for your 2026 tax table update is key. You want to do that after you create your year end wage file, and making a backup before you start is also crucial. All right, that takes us through payroll. Chad, are you talking to us?
Sorry. Yes, there is a question in the chat regarding payroll.
Oh, for 1099s, does GP create the required CSV file the IRS requires for e-filing? We can help you with that. Yep. So Chad, I didn't see a payroll one. Did you?
Oh, I
thought
thought that was payroll. Never mind. I'm sorry.
No worries. All right. No worries at all. Okay, so we can help you with that. You can create a file from GP, or you can use our service to upload. There are several services that are out there as well. Yeah. Okay, so that takes us to our general ledger year-end close, and this is the big one, right? So if you're not on payroll, this is the most important. This is required, and it is critical that you make a backup before you start. So in this case, it's not copying data and moving it over to tables like it does in payroll. It is actually moving data around. So it's creating a journal entry, and it is moving data between historical and open tables. So make sure you make a backup. Make sure you have your users out. Make sure that you have you follow all the steps that we're going to send you in the handout for doing exactly those things. And if you need to know whys, we can tell you all the horror stories. So truly, in almost 30 years, you wouldn't believe the things that happen in the middle of a payroll or in the middle of a general ledger year-end close. So make a backup, kick your users out. Those are your two starting steps. Important steps to take prior to closing the year end. So obviously, get users out and make a backup. I'm going to say that as often as I need to, or as often as I can. And then verify your account types for all general ledger accounts. So make sure your balance sheet accounts are set to be balance sheet accounts. Make sure your retained earnings, your P&L accounts are set to be P&L accounts. You want to make sure that those accounts are going to close to retained earnings and the balance sheet accounts are going to bring a balance forward. So check them and double check them, and use your smart list to make that easy. So it's really simple to say if the account number is before this number, it should be a balance sheet. So you can go in and say, show me all the accounts that are before this number or less than this account number and are set to be P&L. There you go. There's your two accounts that you need to fix from a balance sheet perspective. Do the opposite for your P&L, right? So check your accounts, check your accounts, check your accounts. Can it be fixed after the fact? Yes. Is it easier on you if you don't have to do that? Absolutely. And you'll have less users grumbling at you that you made them get out again. So if you check your accounts first, you save yourself pain and heartache. Your retained earnings account. So in your setup window, you'll see that over to the left. Verify your retained earnings, or that's your year-end closing account. Your setup window has the retained earnings account as well. So in your financial setup and general ledger window, you can verify your retained earnings account and whether or not you are closing divisionally. Get all of your users out and back up your database. I think I may have mentioned that. And then what does your general ledger year-end close do? It moves the transactions for the closed year to your general ledger history. So you have a set of tables for open, you have a set of tables for history. It is literally moving that data. So that's why it's so important that nobody is in and posting while you're doing this process. It creates a journal entry to move the P&L account balances to retained earnings and to bring forward the balance sheet account balances to the next year. And then optionally, you can choose to remove unused segment numbers. So your definition, you can see in our example, we have 3 segments in our general ledger chart of accounts. We can define those segments, so give each segment its own name or definition so that when I create a new account, it can use those to create my account description. And here it's saying if I've never used half of the segments that I imported or set up, I can remove those, right? So I can remove the unused segments and I can also maintain an active account. So that is critical to understand. If you don't understand that inactive accounts are being deleted, then you could be surprised by that. So if you want to maintain those inactive accounts, make sure you check that box. That's important a lot of times for budgeting. Pro tips: balance sheet accounts will not have a beginning balance in the new year until the prior year general ledger is closed. So that's probably the most common support request that we get in the new year is, why don't I have beginning balances on my financials? Well, it's because you haven't closed your year yet. And then the next question that we get is, well, I can't close my year because my auditors haven't gotten me my adjusting journal entries yet. You can post in GP back to the most recently closed year. So if you are in 2025 and you've closed 2024, you can post adjusting journal entries into 2024. And GP will then create the adjusting entries that would have happened as part of year end. So I'd post my debit and my credit, and then GP is going to adjust and essentially create another journal entry to update retained earnings and the balance brought forward. So you can post to the most recent closed year. If I'm in 2025, I've closed 2024. I cannot post into 2023 because I can't go 2 years back. But even then, there's a way to make that happen using the reverse year-end close. So if you needed to do that, you could always reach out to us in support and we can help you with that. So the key to remember is you don't have to wait till June until your auditors are done getting you adjusting journal entries to close your year. You can close your year as soon as you're ready. And then you've got your beginning balances on your financials, and you can post the entries when they come in. Okay. Use SmartList to verify your general ledger account types. So we talked about how easy that is. And then just know that your analytical accounting close is integrated with the general ledger close. So there are no separate steps involved. It happens as part of your general ledger close. It's closing the analytical accounts as well. If you do have analytical accounting, make sure in the handout that we have, we've given you the link to the blog series. Make sure that you click on the analytical accounting blog series. It's got some notes in there about steps that you'll want to take prior to closing the general ledger if you do have analytical accounting. All right. So I think that takes us through the general ledger close. And we've got another poll. Let me see. Cindy McDonald, we've got a question. Should we post all 2025 transactions prior to closing the GL for 2025? So yes, as part of your closing steps for the general ledger, and this is in that detailed handout, we recommend that you go through and you close, we talked about posting all of your subledger transactions, and make sure that you post all of your general ledger transactions too, just because then you've got a more current, the journal entry for the year-end close is as complete as it can be. That said, if you miss a transaction, like we just learned, you can post it. So it's not going to keep you from being able to post that if something is missed. Great question. Okay, Rebecca, I think you're up.
All right, poll number 4. You cannot post to the prior year once it has been closed. True or false?
All right. It looks like we got everyone's responses recorded, so I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1, and share the responses.
All right, good job. Yep, false is the correct answer, 82%. Recording in false.
Excellent. Yep. Like we just talked about, you can post to the prior year once it's been closed, but you can't post 2 years back if they're both closed. So you would need to reverse the year end, which there is a tool for. All right. Great job, and we love the participation. So thanks for everybody for being invested. Rebecca, we'll let you take it from here.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for joining today. We wanted to leave with you a few slides here, kind of at the end of the deck that, again, you'll be receiving after the webinar. Just some additional Armanino resources that are available to you. Certainly, if you do need any help with your year-end close or 1099 processing and you're, existing Armanino clients, you already have a login probably to our portal, or you can submit a support ticket to our customer success team at that Armanino support services at armanino.com. Certainly, our website has, lots of information about many different things. LinkedIn page, sort of a great spot to really learn more about Armanino and webinars and other events that we're hosting that might be useful or beneficial to you. And then some of the other social media accounts as well. Also, Armanino Academy, we do offer some Academy classes and webinars as well. And that's also on our website. And then the 1099 filing service. So again, for those of you that, may be on an older version of GP and, you don't want to apply a year-end update to, be able to print 1099s out of GP. Again, if you're on that older version, using the filing service is a great option. And even if you're on a current version of GP, you still are required to e-file 10 forms or more. And, GP does not provide that e-filing service. So if you're interested, I can certainly give you some more information. But again, there's a hyperlink to the 1099 filing service that we provide. It's, super easy, really convenient. And our team can certainly help getting that data out of GP into the format for the Excel template that the 1099 team would provide. And that just gets uploaded into a portal, and the 1099 team takes it from there and does all the e-filing, mailing recipient, really takes care of it. It's really an end-to-end service that is approved by the IRS. Many of our clients have used it, and it's been helpful and much easier than doing an upgrade. So yeah, anything else? I don't know, Don, Chad,
do we have another? Yep. So we're just, this is how you can connect with us. Feel free to email us. We'd love to hear from you. And I also put in the chat, we'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So feel free to send us a connection if you'd like to connect with us on LinkedIn or email any questions that you have. Does anybody have any questions that we have not covered, or any closing thoughts or questions? All right. Well, it looks like we may give you a few minutes back in your day. Who can't use a few minutes to fill up water, for example? We really appreciate you all being here, and look forward to the next time we see you. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.